There are thousands upon thousands of Hindu temples in India. This one is special because in many ways it is emblematic of how polarized the country has become under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and it is at the heart of his re-election efforts. It has been 3 years since the ground was broken on the Ram temple here in Ayodhya, but the history of the site is a lot longer and more complicated than those numbers suggest. As India prepares for a national election, the structure on the banks of the river Sarayu shows how Modi's Bharatiya Janata Party has become a seemingly unstoppable electoral machine. And it could help Modi fundamentally change the world's most populous country. Construction here in Ayodhya is non-stop as thousands of workers race to complete the temple. The city in northern India has become one of the most popular Hindu pilgrimage destinations, and it has a significance dating back thousands of years. That is when ancient scriptures started citing it as the birthplace of Ram. In Hinduism, Ram is one of the most widely worshipped deities. He is the hero of one of the religion's two epics, the Ramayana. Born a prince of Ayodhya, the tale recounts his exile and then his victory over the forces of evil. He is seen as the embodiment of all that is good, the ideal man. For all those reasons and more, it is a convenient association for the Prime Minister.
उनकी प्रेरणा, उनकी तप तपस्या, उनका दिखाया मार्ग हर देशवासी के लिए है। भगवान राम के आदर्शों पर चलना हम सभी भारतीयों का कर्तव्य है।
Modi has become India's most powerful leader in decades by pushing Hindu nationalism or Hindutva. It is a strand of politics that conflates Hindu religious identity and policy, and it seeks to move India away from the secular politics of its past, instead forging a nation for the majority Hindu population. Ayodhya has become a controversial focus of Hindu nationalism. For the best part of 500 years, the temple was the site of a mosque, the Babri Masjid. In 1992, thousands of Hindus overwhelmed security forces to demolish the mosque. It was a political earthquake that saw thousands die in the riots that followed. The quest to build a new temple galvanized the Hindu nationalist movement and helped Modi's rise to power. In his 2014 election campaign, he made a number of promises to crack down on corruption, develop the economy, introduce the Uniform Civil Code, end the autonomy of India's only Muslim majority state, Jammu and Kashmir, and significantly build the Ram Temple.
मोदी जी हैं तो मुमकिन है, क्योंकि मोदी जी की बस की ही बात है, और तो हमें तो नहीं लगता, क्योंकि हमारी जितनी उम्र निकल गई है 28 साल लगभग हम हो गए हैं, हमने देखा नहीं है उनके जैसे नेता.
But the last decade in power has been challenging at times. Even as India's economy continues to grow at a rapid rate, that growth hasn't benefited everyone uniformly, and unemployment remains stubbornly high. Modi has delivered on some of his more contentious promises, scrapping Kashmir's autonomy and now building this temple. These are policies that have helped Modi overcome other electoral concerns. Take the most recent elections in November, when key bellwether states including Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh went to the polls. Opposition leader Rahul Gandhi and his Indian National Congress Party had been hopeful of capitalizing on some of Modi's perceived weaknesses to make inroads. There was a sense before the vote that support among farmers and women, two of the BJP's core constituencies, might be waning.
जिन जिन मुद्दों पे मोदी जी आए थे, उन भ्रष्टाचार हो, महंगाई हो, रोजगार हो, वो आज तक कोई भी मतलब उन्होंने जो वादे किए अभी तक पूरे नहीं करे.
Neetu Patel is a former school teacher who's now a homemaker. After years voting for the BJP, she voted for Gandhi's Indian National Congress in November.
सरकार बदलना जरूरी है, बदलाव बहुत जरूरी है. इनमें घमंड बहुत ज़्यादा आ गया है, तानाशाही करने लगे हैं इनके नेता.
Patel was particularly worried about inflation, which remained high in November. For about 70% of India's rural households, agriculture is still the sole livelihood. Modi promised to double farm income when seeking his second term. Tulsiram Patidar owns a large farm around Bhopal.
लेकिन अब मजबूरी है, क्या कर रहे हैं, मजबूरी है ना.
Even so, it has taken time for Patidar to come around to Gandhi and the Congress.
पहले क्या था कि बिल्कुल ही इनको राहुल को ही कुछ नहीं कर पाते थे, लेकिन जब से ये अपनी पूरी कन्याकुमारी से और उत्तराखंड तक यात्रा की है, वो बाकी में दबदारी से यात्रा की है साहब.
Despite the concerns, there was still a high turnout for Modi.
मोदी जी के नाम की तो माया पूरे देश में है. ये हम सबका सौभाग्य है कि वो भारतीय जनता पार्टी के नेता हैं.
When the election results landed on December 3rd, the BJP retained power in Madhya Pradesh and wrested control of the state legislature from the Indian National Congress in both Rajasthan and Chhattisgarh.
The opposition political parties, despite their best efforts, have not been able to challenge or question Modi's credibility in the eyes of the people. This is something which Rahul Gandhi never understood, that holding a position of power or holding a state office has a natural tendency of introducing a charisma in you, and which has benefited Narendra Modi in building up his profile.
As concerns about unemployment and corruption persist in some quarters, the Indian Prime Minister has taken advantage of rising nationalism, which has also taken hold in other parts of the world. And the Ram Temple stands as an example of that. Prakash Sharma is a former leader of the Hindu nationalist VHP, the organization that convened the rally with the BJP that culminated in the destruction of the Babri Masjid in 1992.
इनका दुर्भाग्य ये है कि मोदी जी ने कभी अपने आप की हिंदू आइडेंटिटी को छिपाया नहीं. सीखना चाहिए उनको ना. उनको अगर भारत में अगर इस देश में किसी को राजनीति करनी है तो हिंदू की उपेक्षा करके वो राजनीति नहीं कर पाएगा. ये बाकी राजनीतिक दलों को समझना चाहिए.
That Modi represents the interest of all Hindus is of course hotly contested by his opponents, not least Rahul Gandhi.
There's nothing Hindu about what the BJP does. They're not Hindu nationalists. They are nothing to do with Hinduism.
Since we are in a transition period from the old-fashioned secular politics to a majoritarian politics, there are a lot of people who are sympathizers and supporters of the old ways. They are very disturbed by this politics of polarization. They think that something fundamentally disruptive is being unleashed by the present regime.
The temple won't be completed for a few years, and yet Modi is opening it in January 2024, just months before a general election. An electoral victory might let his government pursue an agenda that could include more temples on disputed sites, a national register of citizens, and a law that makes it harder for Muslims to demonstrate that they are Indian citizens. Steps that could cement India's move away from the secular politics of its past.
There's not a single luxury house that does not produce in India.
We've recently had Beyoncé in her tours wearing a few of our outfits.
High quality, exclusive, and European. The hallmarks of the €180 billion luxury fashion industry. But unknown to many consumers is a closely guarded secret. Countries like India are often at the heart of what's considered European luxury fashion. For decades, luxury fashion houses obscured their business ties to developing nations like India or Vietnam, where labor is cheap and hard to find handicraft skills plentiful.
Even if you produce in Europe, at the end, the manufacturing, the reality of that business is done in India.
Fashion executives have long seen labels saying made in France or made in Italy as key to higher profits. They worry about Western consumer stereotypes that question quality. There's also the optics of sourcing goods from places where working conditions can be poor. But that's increasingly contested by those fighting for transparency in how luxury fashion credits its suppliers. We set out to investigate what's behind a fashion label. India's contribution to luxury fashion spans empires. The nation's embroiderers were traditionally mostly Muslim men who had migrated to Mumbai from rural parts of the country. They're known by the Urdu word karigar, or artisan.
Embroidery has always been the distinction between the elite, the royal court, and the different layers of society. Even if the creation is done in Paris, even if we have ateliers in Paris doing embroidery, or in Italy, or in England, India has really become the backbone of the embroidery industry.
From the 1980s, luxury brands have relied on India for much of their embroidery. Today, there are two kinds of textile facilities. First, export houses in safe, well-ventilated facilities. Second, subcontractors in small factories. We're sitting in a small factory in central Mumbai that has completed subcontracted orders for some of the most established international designers. When order volumes are large, Indian embroidery export houses take orders to subcontractors throughout the city. Sometimes they work with as many as a dozen subcontractors for a single order. This is the bottom of the supply chain, and the working conditions are often the worst. Sometimes artisans, to save on rent, sleep on the factory floor after they've completed their work for the day. India is now one of the world's largest garment exporters, with the textiles and apparel market worth more than $150 billion in 2021. But the country's connection to Western luxury brands remained secret for years.
We've forgotten the past, we've forgotten the excellence of craft. The big question, in fact, is to know why these luxury brands are so hesitant in putting Made India on these products when they should be, by law, putting it Made in India.
The global fashion system is built on exploitation. It's not coincidence, but by design, that most of fashion today is produced in regions where freedom of association is restricted, where it's difficult for workers to exert their rights. So when it comes to obscuring supply chains, there's a myth that being transparent is commercially sensitive, that it would harm business to be transparent and disclose who and where your clothes are made. Improved transparency is absolutely essential to protecting the people who make our clothes, who are often some of the most vulnerable people in global supply chains.
Our investigation looked at one jacket as a case study. The garment, embellished entirely with delicate micro mirrors, retails for almost 43,000 euros. And according to exporters in Mumbai, it took more than 2,000 hours to embroider in India. Seamstresses estimated the piece then underwent less than 100 hours of stitching and finishing touches in Europe. It carries a Made in France tag, reflecting European Union regulations that define the country of origin as the place where the last substantial transformation took place, not where the bulk of labor was completed. A Dior spokesperson told Bloomberg that even though the mirror coat is an exceptional piece that showcases India's savoir-faire, nevertheless, it was made in France, which justifies the dedicated Made in label. Still, in March 2023, Dior became one of the first international luxury brands to showcase a collection in India, saying it's determined to promote the country's artisanal legacy worldwide. Chanakya International, the Indian export house that embroidered clothing for the Dior Mumbai collection, declined to comment.
What we are very happy about and elated about is that actually Dior took a first step to announce its supplier. We were all kept hidden for a long time. It has changed the way the others are thinking, putting us more forward for recognition of our work and our embroidery and our craftsmanship, which earlier they wanted to show maybe that it was done in Paris or Italy. Now they are happy and to say that this embroidery is done in India.
India's growing importance across industries has made the world's most populous nation impossible to ignore. One recipient of this attention is Gayatri Khanna. Her company Malaya Embroideries has climbed atop the ranks of Mumbai's highest profile export houses. She counts Versace, Balmain, and Dolce&Gabbana as just some of her clients.
Today we are a 450 employee business. We are in the center, in the heart of Mumbai. We have over 150 odd clients, which are amazing, and we cherish all our collaborations.
When you talk about Made in India, you tend to celebrate craft, which is coming from India. At the same time, you're also celebrating the people who are making it. I think it is also all about how to dream together.
For many in the industry, the Made in India garment tag is paving the way for a younger, progressive wing of creatives who want more fairness and transparency in how luxury fashion credits its suppliers.
So today I feel that things are slightly changing, slowly changing, because they cannot lie anymore. They have to acknowledge that since the last 30 years, they've been manufacturing in the country, manufacturing in India.
This is Valerie. She was 5 years old when she received chemotherapy.
Soy la mamá de Valerie. Ella fue diagnosticada en el mes de julio del 2018. Fue diagnosticada con leucemia. En noviembre del 2019 ya iba a cumplir un año en tratamiento. La doctora, ella decía que ya la niña estaba superando la enfermedad. O sea, estaba súper bien. La doctora me había dicho que en noviembre del 2019 estaba bien la niña.
Valerie would receive chemotherapy treatments here at the Clínica Medical Duarte in the small border city of Cúcuta in Colombia. On January 23, 2020, doctors at the clinic gave Valerie a dose of methotrexate, a drug used to treat cancer. Less than 24 hours later, she was back in the hospital. Days later, she was dead. The drug Valerie was given, methotrexate, was made by Naprod Life Sciences, a manufacturer headquartered in India, a country that supplies 20% of the world's generic drugs. But instead of being sterile, the medicine was contaminated with bacteria and had become dangerous. In a months-long investigation, we learned this wasn't an isolated incident. Naprod's medicines have been linked to dire quality issues, with almost zero consequences. This is a story of a drug maker with a dangerous track record and how it keeps selling medicine, leaving families and doctors to suffer the consequences. Methotrexate is a drug used to treat leukemia and other cancers and has been around for decades. When given as an injection, the conditions in which the drug is made are always supposed to be sterile. If the raw ingredients aren't tested adequately, if a production line isn't cleaned properly, if the water isn't filtered thoroughly, the life-saving medicine could become potentially lethal. Naprod Life Sciences plays a crucial, if sometimes unnoticed, role in the world's drug supply chain. None of its medicines are for sale in the US. Instead, it mostly sells directly to suppliers in low-income countries. Batches of the cancer drug methotrexate, made here in 2018 and 2019, were sent to clinics in Colombia. Later, Colombian drug regulators confirmed that a dangerous bacteria was found in the drug. Doctors suspected more than 100 patients had suffered reactions linked to the contaminated medicine. A total of 4 kids died, and the drug was later recalled. My colleague Priyanka Pulla looked into Naprod's operations in India.
This is a plant that makes many low-cost cancer generics for big brand names such as Intas, Dr. Reddy's, and Abbott. Former employees of Naprod whom we spoke to told us that the quality control in this company was not up to the mark and was neglected greatly. The former quality control employee spoke to us on condition of anonymity. He was asked to hurry through quality tests.
Our seniors used to say us sometimes just skip that part and complete that work.
What did you think when you heard about this Pseudomonas contamination in Colombia coming from Naprod's products?
It is found in the sealed vial. It is definitely coming from the company. It is not coming from anywhere else. The damage can never be reversed. It is that lethal.
Indian regulators have frequently failed to detect and clamp down on really dangerous quality issues.
Maharashtra FDA is trying their best to get a good quality medicine to people around the world, not only in India. Though we don't have any sufficient staff, we are trying, we are working very hard. And they have corrected their problems. They told that we already rectified. It was a minor problem in Colombia. They have asked and they have already taken the action. They have investigated.
State governments are very eager to attract the pharmaceutical industry and to get them to set up their manufacturing plants because it helps them generate revenue and jobs. And the state regulators are directly under these state governments. These state regulators are not very well staffed, they are underfunded. If you put these two things together, it's a very dangerous cocktail because this means that India's huge manufacturing industry doesn't get as much oversight as it needs.
This wasn't the first time quality issues were found at Naprod. In India, 3 separate batches of its cancer drugs failed quality tests in 2017 and 2018. In Ethiopia, researchers tested multiple samples of its chemo drug and found only half the stated active ingredient. Yet the company has not faced any serious consequences from regulators, the big pharmaceutical companies buying Naprod's products, or public health warnings from the World Health Organization. Naprod declined to comment on Valerie's case or other cases in Colombia, citing ongoing legal proceedings. The company said it has responded appropriately to quality concerns raised by regulators and makes high-quality products.
La niña no aguantaba el dolor en la columna, no aguantaba el vómito, el dolor de cabeza. Me queda así como un dolor grande de no haber podido hacer más por ella. Y de lo que ella se despidió cuando ella me dice, no, ya no aguanto más, mami, ya. Y me tomó de las manos y se desprendió. Ya sentía ahí que se me fue en ese momento. Fueron las últimas palabras que me dijo.
So who is to blame for Valerie's death? And how can people in low-income countries ensure their drugs are safe? Despite its track record, Naprod continued selling medicines around the world, cashing in on growing markets for generic cancer drugs. And Valerie's case is stuck in the labyrinth of Colombian government bureaucracy. The Attorney General's office received Valerie's autopsy report 4 years ago. It has listed her cause of death as under study. In the years that have passed, there have been few signs of progress in the probe. In recent months, the Attorney General's office has started interviewing families and others involved. But 2,500 miles away, a researcher in the US is trying to perfect a test to help detect bad quality drugs before they reach patients.
The
market for chemotherapy products is increasing, and it's increasing in locations where often the regulatory agencies are under-resourced, particularly for analysis of highly toxic chemotherapy products. And so it's a very risky situation right now.
The paper test her team developed is a field lab kit run on a sample of medicine, testing for the amount of active ingredient. It costs as little as $2 and can be done easily by a nurse using a cell phone.
And these are a field screening device that you can use to check a medicine quickly and see if it looks good or if it looks suspicious.
Nearly 4 years after Valerie's death, NAPROD continues to sell its drugs to customers around the world.
O sea, yo como la mamá de la niña, este sufrimiento es muy grande y yo sé que no solamente soy yo la que estoy pasando por esto, sé que hay más padres que están sufriendo porque este vacío es muy fuerte, o sea, de la pérdida. O sea, para mí, o sea, sería importante que, o sea, no pasara más, o sea, que no tuvieran que otro padre sufrir.
For the last 10 years, India's leader Narendra Modi and his ruling party have been promoting a resurgence in Hindu culture. That includes Ayurveda, an alternative medical system that has existed in India for centuries. The business of Ayurveda is booming. Today, both Indian and Western consumers are more eager than ever to snatch up Ayurvedic medicines and treatments. Within the next 5 years, the market for Ayurvedic products in India is projected to top $20 billion. But there's a dark side to the boom. Some doctors in India have reported patients facing life-threatening side effects after long-term use of Ayurvedic medicines.
It's all about nationalism. This has nothing to do with public health care. It has everything to do with maintaining a vote bank.
Is nationalism changing the way medicine is practiced in the country? Ayurveda's history stretches back thousands of years, making it one of the world's oldest forms of healthcare. The word translates to science of life. Ayurvedic products include everything from herbal medicines to yoga and meditation. Here, at the Global Ayurveda Festival, hundreds of practitioners and startups have gathered to sell their products. The promotion of Ayurveda is a key priority for Narendra Modi's government. He even set up a special ministry, Ayush, to promote Ayurveda in India and abroad.
Our system is running under the control of Ministry of Ayush. Drugs, research works. We got a National Ayurveda Day, International Yoga Day, everything under the control of Ministry of Ayush only.
Traditionally, Ayurveda proponents would focus on balanced lifestyles, energy alignment, and herbal cures. But today, highly commercialized packaged goods and quick fix supplements are generating huge profits for Indian companies.
Patanjali Herbal Power Vita.
Patanjali Foods and Dabur India
Dabur Chyawanprash
are two of the biggest companies selling Ayurvedic goods. They're worth more than $15 billion combined. Social media has been critical to marketing these alternative medicines around the world, especially in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. Dr. Saba Mahmood is a health professional with over 15 years of clinical and public health experience. She is the co-founder of FirstCheck, a website that battles health misinformation in India.
People
fall for it because it's because of the social media only. There are so many claims that this will heal you without giving you any side effect. That is the main thing what they claim. But you never know what are the side effects of those medicines because they have not been researched well.
In 2020, the Indian government ordered Patanjali to stop claiming a kit of herbal treatments could cure COVID-19.
Over the years now, with the introduction of smartphones plus the social media, most of the patients, they before going to the doctor, they just search on the different search engines and come up with their own remedies for their own ailments, be it homeopathic, be it Ayurvedic, be it any other kind of medicine.
Some doctors are using social media to take on Ayurveda.
You can actually see that it's 90% alcohol.
Dr. Abby Phillips is a hepatologist and routinely sees patients with medical complications stemming from Ayurvedic treatments.
When I started working in Kerala, I started seeing a large group of patients with severe liver disease. And ultimately we figured out that the causes for these severe liver disease was actually because of herbal medications. Ayurveda is a pseudoscience. It's an ancient practice that was born out of culture, faith and religion about 2000 years ago.
Dr. Phillips has styled himself as something of a whistleblower, posting almost daily about the dangers of Ayurveda.
As a physician, I am bound to educate the people on what is right to health for them, what the right informed decisions on health-seeking behavior should be. What we have seen in the last decade, a lot of money has been spent on Ayush-related practices, promotion of Ayush-related practices at the central and at the state level.
As a result of his activities, he has faced lawsuits and even government intervention.
Politics is very closely intertwined with healthcare. So there is going to be a lot of limelight on the Ayush industry and Ayush stakeholders, especially with the elections. And I think there's a huge vote bank. And also, it's not just the practitioners in these communities, but also the people who support these communities.
But inside Ayurvedic hospitals, pharmacies, and spas, practitioners say the government is doing a terrific job.
They have been giving support to the colleges, to the universities to do more research, to the hospital to build better hospitals, research centers also. Ayush Ministry definitely are doing a very good job.
Ultimately, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Ayush strategy supports his government's larger project. Celebrity figures like Baba Ramdev, a yoga guru widely seen as an ally of Modi, are key to this project, attempting to modernize Ayurveda and transform it from an alternative medicine to a primary healthcare option in India. Indian traditions are seemingly taking the world by storm, and Modi's rise is sweeping the nation. But doctors, including Abby Phillips, continue to warn that extending the Modi government's nationalist mission to medicine and to Ayurveda could spell trouble.
Dr. Tarun Mittal is a surgeon in New Delhi. He's fighting on the front lines of an epidemic quietly sweeping India, driven by a new menace: junk food.
We reduce the size of the stomach, which is called sleeve gastrectomy. We have operated from age of 13 till the age of 74. Initially, when I joined my practice, I was seeing maybe 1 or 2 patients a month. Now I am seeing 15 to 20 patients a month.
In India, almost 1 in 4 adults is considered overweight or obese. If nothing changes, the country's obesity rate is set to increase by more than 80% by 2035. This is not simply a story of individuals making unhealthy lifestyle choices. In India and much of the world, larger economic and social forces are threatening people's health and prosperity. Much of India's history has been blighted by famine. As recently as 1943, the Bengal famine killed up to 3 million people. Even now, roughly a third of children suffer from stunted growth. And yet, over the last 3 decades, obesity has surged, and it's set to get worse. That's been accompanied by a rise in cardiovascular disease and diabetes. The economic costs are enormous. Premature deaths, healthcare costs, and productivity losses resulting from an overweight population are estimated to top $129 billion by 2035, almost 2% of its GDP.
It's a double burden of malnutrition now. Malnutrition means under and over. Now we are seeing a lot of overnutrition as well.
Dr. Arun Gupta is a paediatrician and health campaigner. He is the co-author of The Junk Push, a report detailing how changing food consumption threatens health.
Since the globalization, the marketing of processed and ultra-processed food has picked up. That has actually influenced a lot of dietary habits. One of the major input here is unhealthy diet composing of ultra-processed foods, high in sugar, high in saturated fat, or high in salt or sodium.
Throughout the country, home-cooked meals are losing out to empty calories and sugar. In the span of a decade, India's consumption of breakfast cereals and potato chips have more than tripled, while confectionery items and soda sales have doubled. India is a massive emerging market for Western brands. Sales of ultra-processed snack food and sugary beverages grew from $6.2 billion in 2009 to $32 billion in 2022. For companies like Nestle, Unilever, or Kellanova, sales are growing at double-digit rates. And who are one of the main targets?
Whenever we go to a party, suppose a birthday party of one friend, there'll be various junk food items such as Coke, Pepsi.
I really enjoy Maggi and like noodles and ramen.
Burger King, McDonald's,
Maggi, pasta,
chips,
burger, pizza. They taste very delicious.
India's new food economy has created a public health conundrum, with the packaged food and beverages industry increasingly affecting the diets of 1.4 billion Indians. One remedy that other countries have turned to is stricter regulation. Chile, for example, has an advertising ban on television on certain foods between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. It also has restricted the use of child-targeted imagery in the marketing of these products. After these interventions were introduced, sugary drink sales dropped by 24%, as well as calorie consumption, calories from sugar, and calories from saturated fat. Until now, India has mostly relied on the companies themselves self-regulating how they convey the nutritional value of their products. The results, some argue, are misleading.
If you see the front of the pack, you will see that they claim that it's like 50% of vitamin D, rich in vitamin C, no added preservatives, and it says very brightly 20% protein. But if you look at the back of the label, you find the 46% of it is sugar. More than 13 grams of sugar, stabilizer, colors, and flavors. If you are telling people that it is high in protein, you very well tell it is high in sugar and high in fat also.
Efforts are underway to introduce a more rigorous system. Throughout 2021 and 2022, Indian authorities consulted health and consumer rights experts and representatives of food companies about a new labelling system. While health and consumer rights groups argued for a traffic light system used by much of Europe, which signals red for products high in sugar, fat or salt, the eventual conclusion by the authority was for a health star rating, which assigns star ratings for a product's overall nutritional value. Not everyone was happy.
Health stars only point that this food is either healthy or less healthy. It doesn't tell people that it is unhealthy.
For example, a pack of cookies may have a very high amount of sugar, but if the manufacturers add nuts, it could get awarded a star for containing fiber.
Getting that regulation right has been evading us in the country. So that is one part of the story, but what we are missing out is, working at community level with children, with parents, families, to create an environment for healthy eating and sustainable food environments.
Pavan Agrawal runs the Food Future Foundation, a non-profit that seeks to educate school children about healthy eating. The foundation runs programs in schools like this one in order to educate children and parents.
It is so important to focus on preventive strategy and use diet and lifestyle as an entry point for this intervention. Government or any regulatory body cannot reach out to individual citizen at all meal times. So at the end of the day, it is about individual choices.
While nutrition advocates seek tighter regulation, that may run at odds with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's strategy to attract more investment from multinational companies. The fear among health experts is that the burden will ultimately fall upon people to make healthy choices on their own, with little guidance from the government.
One of the tactics they use is putting the onus on the people. That it is the people who are choosing to eat wrong foods. It's not us, which probably is one of the strategies which they have been using for tobacco also. That people are smoking by their choice, not because of the marketing.
What cigarette do you smoke, Doctor? The brand named most was Camel. Smoke Camels, the cigarette so many doctors enjoy.
The tactic is industry will become a part of the solution. They want to be a part of the solution. They enter into policy making bodies. Of course, the government allows them to do so as stakeholders.
Strict regulations and education have driven down smoking rates across the globe. Imposing controls on the food industry may be necessary to fight India's surging obesity rates and the illnesses that it causes.
Diabetes, hypertension, joint pains, back pain, varicose veins, gallbladder stone, hernia, cancers, infertility, chest problems, heart problems. It is putting an enormous strain on our economy.
A country once blighted by too few calories must face a new battle with too many empty ones.